In 2006, 5 years after they vanished on Denali, the perfectly preserved bodies of photographers Lucas Novak and Ryan Thompson were discovered in a melting glacier, their cameras still clutched in their frozen hands. In a secure lab, investigators watched in shock as the recovered photos revealed what the men saw in their final moments: a secret drilling operation, armed guards, and a biohazard container being pulled from the ancient ice. They realized the photographers hadn't been lost to the mountain, they'd been silenced. But the real shock came from the duo's recovered satellite phone. The final message wasn't a call for help from the photographers, but an encrypted text to their killers. Targets isolated, proceed with extraction, compensation doubled if equipment recovered intact. This wasn't just a murder to cover up a secret. It was a targeted assassination to steal the evidence they had just captured on camera. If you've ever wondered what drives people to risk everything for the perfect photograph, this story might make you question what's really worth dying for. I'd love to hear about the most extreme place you've ever visited or would like to explore. Let me know in the comments below. And if this is your first time here, welcome to Last Seen Stories, where we uncover the truth behind mysterious disappearances. Hit that subscribe button to join our community and never miss a new upload.
Alexandra, Alex Novak, sat in the dim light of her Toronto apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of her brother's life. Every wall displayed Lucas Novak's award-winning photographs, breathtaking landscapes and death-defying adventure shots that had made him famous. His National Geographic covers were framed chronologically, telling the story of a career cut tragically short at its peak. But it was the coffee table that revealed Alex's true obsession: meticulously organized investigation files, search and rescue reports, weather data, and topographical maps of Mount Denali's north face, all annotated in her precise handwriting. 5 years had passed since Lucas and his photography partner Ryan Thompson had vanished during what should have been another triumphant expedition. 5 years of Alex pushing for answers when officials wanted to close the case. 5 birthdays where she still bought her brother a gift. 5 Christmas dinners with an empty chair. "They're calling again," Alex said to no one in particular, glancing at her ringing phone. The caller ID displayed her mother's name. She let it go to voicemail, knowing the conversation would be the same as always: gentle pressure to move on and find closure. But Alex couldn't move on, not when the official explanation felt so wrong. She picked up a framed photo of herself with Lucas from their last day together before his final expedition. They were laughing on her balcony, with the CN Tower visible in the background. Lucas had his arm around her shoulders, his other hand holding up his favorite vintage Nikon camera, as if to capture the moment within a moment. He was 34 then, 3 years older than Alex, with the same dark, wavy hair and intense green eyes they'd inherited from their Ukrainian grandmother. "I know you didn't just fall into a crevasse," she whispered to the photograph. "You were too careful, too experienced." Alex had just been 11 when Lucas, at 14, had received his first real camera. She remembered how he'd photographed everything, developing black and white prints in their father's makeshift darkroom in the basement. Even then, Lucas had been drawn to danger, leaning precariously over railings or climbing onto rooftops for the perfect angle. Their mother had worried constantly, but their father, a former war photographer, had recognized something of himself in his son. When Lucas met Ryan Thompson during their first year at art school, it was as if he'd found his missing half. Ryan was technically brilliant, but cautious by nature. Lucas was all instinct and daring. Together, they pushed each other to create images no one else could capture. By their late 20s, they were legends in the adventure photography world.
known for accessing locations others deemed impossible. "The North Base expedition was supposed to be your masterpiece," Alex murmured, flipping open a folder labeled Satellite Communications. Inside were transcripts of the routine check-ins Lucas and Ryan had made during their ascent. Everything was normal until suddenly it wasn't. Their last transmission, casual and upbeat, mentioned setting up camp at 14,000 feet, with plans to reach a specific ridge for the shot of a lifetime at dawn. They were never heard from again. The search had been extensive but ultimately futile. Helicopters, search and rescue teams, and experienced climbers had scoured the mountain for weeks. All they found was an abandoned campsite with some of their gear missing. No bodies, no blood, no distress signals. Nothing to indicate what had happened to two experienced climbers at the top of their game. The official conclusion: Lucas and Ryan had likely fallen into one of Denali's notorious crevasses during their dawn expedition, their bodies lost forever in the depths of the glacier. A tragic but not uncommon fate in the world of extreme adventure. Alex had never accepted it. She'd taken a leave of absence from her job as an investigative journalist to conduct her own search, interviewing everyone from their equipment suppliers to the pilot who'd last dropped supplies. She'd studied glacial movements and weather patterns, consulted with mountaineering experts, and even learned technical climbing herself to better understand the terrain. Her search had yielded nothing concrete, only questions that grew colder with each passing year. Until today. The phone rang again. This time the caller ID displayed an Anchorage, Alaska number. Alex's heart skipped as she answered. "Ms. Novak, this is Sergeant Peter Walsh with the Alaska State Troopers. I'm calling about your brother, Lucas Novak." The world seemed to slow down as the officer continued speaking. Words like recovery, remains, and identification filtered through the shock. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Alex managed, her free hand gripping the edge of the table. "A team of climbers discovered what appears to be human remains emerging from the Kalhitna Glacier yesterday. The body was partially exposed due to increased glacial melt this season. Initial evidence suggests it may be one of the missing photographers from the 2001 incident. We've recovered camera equipment consistent with your brother's gear." Alex closed her eyes, breathing deeply. After 5 years of searching for answers, she felt oddly calm. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "We'd like you to come to Alaska if possible, to assist with identification of personal effects. The recovery operation is ongoing, but challenging due to the location." "I'll be on the next flight," Alex said, without hesitation. 12 hours later, Alex stared out the window of a small charter plane as it approached the imposing mass of Denali. Even in summer, the mountain's upper reaches remained blanketed in snow and ice, beautiful and deadly. She had studied countless photographs of this peak, traced its contours on maps, and imagined her brother's final moments here so many times that it felt eerily familiar.
The pilot, a weathered man named Kowalski who'd been flying these routes for decades, glanced back at her. "You holding up okay?" Alex nodded, not trusting her voice. In her lap was a small leather journal, Lucas's sister journal, identical to the one he'd carried on every expedition since they were teenagers. He'd given it to her before leaving, saying, "Keep it safe. I'll fill mine with the best stories yet when I get back." That journal was still missing, along with Lucas himself. Until now. At Talkeetna, the small town serving as base for Denali expeditions, Alex was met by Detective Nathan Blackwood, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the sturdy build of someone accustomed to wilderness work. He wore the official uniform of the Alaska State Troopers, but carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who spent more time in the mountains than in an office. "Ms. Novak," he greeted her, extending a hand. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Please, call me Alex. And honestly, after 5 years of not knowing, any circumstance that brings answers is welcome." Blackwood nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The recovery team is working at the site now. I'll be taking you up tomorrow, weather permitting. Tonight, I'd like to brief you on what we've found so far, if you're up to it." "I've been waiting 5 years, Detective. I don't want to wait another minute." He led her to a small conference room in the ranger station, where large photographs were laid out on a table. Blackwood hesitated before gesturing to them. "These are preliminary images from the discovery site. I should warn you, they're difficult to view." Alex steeled herself and looked down. The first image showed a section of blue-white glacier where something dark was emerging from the ice. It took her a moment to recognize it as a human hand, still clutching what was unmistakably a camera. In the next photo, taken from a different angle, more of the ice had been carefully removed, revealing an arm clad in the distinctive red Gore-Tex jacket of Lucas's favorite jacket. "Is it him?" she asked quietly, her trained journalist's eye scanning the images for details while her heart pounded in her chest. "We believe so, based on the clothing and equipment, but we need official identification. The preservation is remarkable. The extreme cold and the specific conditions within the glacier have essentially mummified the remains." "You said remains, plural, in your call. Have you found Ryan too?" Blackwood nodded slowly. "That's what makes this discovery so unusual. We've located both men, close together, along with much of their equipment. It appears they weren't separated when whatever happened, happened." Alex moved to the next photograph and gasped. More ice had been removed, revealing a partial view of a face. Her brother's face, eerily preserved, eyes closed as if sleeping. There was no visible trauma, no sign of the violent death she had imagined countless times. "How?" she whispered. "That's what we're trying to determine," Blackwood said. "The location doesn't match where we thought they disappeared. They're nearly 2 miles from their last known position, in an area that wasn't thoroughly searched because it was considered too dangerous and unstable at the time." Alex studied the remaining photographs, her journalistic training helping her maintain composure despite the shock of seeing her brother's frozen form. In one image, a section of ice had been cleared to reveal what appeared to be a backpack and additional camera equipment. "Their gear is still with them?" "Yes, most of it, yes. Unusually intact. That's part of what doesn't fit the crevasse fall theory. In most fatal climbing accidents, equipment is damaged or scattered. Here, everything seems arranged, almost." Alex looked up sharply. "Arranged? What do you mean?" Blackwood hesitated. "It's too early to draw conclusions. The glaciologists and forensic team will have better answers once we complete the recovery. Which brings me to tomorrow. The operation is delicate and dangerous. The section of glacier is still moving, albeit slowly, and the warming temperatures make the ice unstable. I need to know you can follow safety protocols exactly if you're coming up with us." "I understand. I've spent the last 5 years learning everything I could about glacier travel and climbing safety. I won't be a liability." Blackwood nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Get some rest then. We fly out at first light." But rest wouldn't come that night. In her small room at the Talkeetna Lodge, Alex sat by the window overlooking the vast Alaskan wilderness, Lucas's journal open in her lap. She flipped through his previous entries, detailed accounts of expeditions to the Himalayas, the Andes, Antarctica. His elegant handwriting filled page after page with technical details, personal reflections, and sketches of landscapes. The final third of the journal remained blank, waiting for stories that would never be written. "I'm going to fill those pages, Lucas.
with the truth about what happened to you? Dawn broke clear and cold over Denali, the massive peak glowing pink in the early light. By 6 a.m., Alex was on board a helicopter with Blackwood and 2 glaciologists hovering over the vast expanse of the Kahiltna Glacier. Below them, a small team had already established a camp at the recovery site, their orange tents bright against the blue-white ice.
As they descended, Alex saw that a section of the glacier had been cordoned off with flags and ropes. Equipment that looked like a cross between archaeological tools and ice climbing gear was arranged neatly alongside what appeared to be body bags designed for cold conditions. The helicopter landed on a flat area of snow about 100 yards from the site. As Alex stepped out, the thin air at 12,000 feet made her head swim momentarily. Blackwood steadied her with a hand on her arm. "Take it slow. The altitude affects everyone." Alex nodded, focusing on her breathing as they made their way carefully toward the recovery site. The glacier beneath her crampons creaked and groaned, a living thing in slow motion. At the edge of the cordoned area, a woman in a National Park Service uniform approached them. "Dr. Lauren Frost," she introduced herself. "I'm leading the glaciological side of the recovery. You must be Alexandra Novak?" "Alex," she corrected automatically, shaking the woman's gloved hand. "What can you tell me about how they were found?" Dr. Frost gestured toward the site where several people worked carefully with ice picks and small electric tools. "A team of climbers spotted the exposure 3 days ago. Just a hand and part of a camera visible at first. They reported it immediately, and we've been working since then to free the remains without damaging them or the surrounding evidence." "Evidence?" Alex asked. "Is this being treated as more than an accident now?" Dr. Frost and Blackwood exchanged a glance. "Standard procedure in any unusual recovery," Blackwood said smoothly. "Come, I'll show you what we've found so far." As they approached the excavation, Alex's heart hammered in her chest. The site was larger than she'd imagined from the photographs. A depression in the ice, perhaps 15 feet across, with 2 distinct areas of focus where teams worked with painstaking care. "We've almost completely freed the first body," Dr. Frost explained, leading Alex to the edge of the depression. "Based on the clothing and the camera he was holding, we believe it's your brother." Alex steeled herself as she looked down into the ice cave they had created. There, nestled in a hollow of blue-white ice, as if arranged in a display case, was Lucas. His body was curled slightly, one arm extended upward, with the camera still clutched in his frozen fingers. His red jacket was vivid against the ice, looking almost new despite 5 years of entombment. His face, partially visible, appeared peaceful, with no sign of trauma or fear. "Oh, Lucas," Alex whispered, tears stinging her eyes in the cold air. "I'm so sorry," Dr. Frost said quietly. "Would you like a moment?" Alex shook her head. "No, I need to see everything. I need to understand what happened." Dr. Frost nodded and led her to the second excavation area, a few feet away, where another team worked to free Ryan Thompson's body. Like Lucas, Ryan appeared remarkably preserved, his blue jacket instantly recognizable to Alex. He lay on his side, one arm outstretched toward Lucas, his face set in what looked like determination rather than fear. "They're so close together," Alex observed. "If they fell into a crevasse, wouldn't they be more likely to be separated?" "That's one of the anomalies we're investigating," Dr. Frost confirmed. "Typically, crevasse folds result in chaotic positioning. This appears more deliberate." Alex circled the excavation slowly, her journalist's eye cataloging details. Both men still wore their climbing harnesses and had ice axes attached. Their helmets were in place. Nothing about their positioning suggested a sudden, violent fall. "What's that?" she asked, pointing to something metallic glinting near Ryan's hand. "A satellite phone," Blackwood said, coming to stand beside her. "Still intact, which is another unusual element. We're hoping to extract data from it once it's properly thawed under controlled conditions." "And that," Alex pointed to a dark shape visible in the ice near Lucas's feet. "His backpack.
We're about to begin extracting it now that we've documented the positioning of the bodies. Would you like to be present?" Alex nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as two technicians carefully chipped away the remaining ice around Lucas's backpack, eventually freeing it completely. It was brought to a processing table set up nearby, where a forensic technician in a National Park Service uniform prepared to open it. "Miss Novak, can you confirm this is your brother's backpack?" the technician asked. She examined it closely. The red and black North Face pack was instantly familiar, still bearing the distinctive Nepali prayer flag patch Lucas had sewn onto it after their expedition to Everest Base Camp 3 years before his disappearance. "His expedition journal," she breathed, her hands instinctively reaching for it before stopping herself. "Can I—" "Not yet," the technician said apologetically. "We need to process everything first, make sure nothing is damaged during thawing, but I promise you'll be able to see it soon."
Alex nodded, understanding the protocols but frustrated nonetheless. As the technician continued cataloging the contents, she turned back to Blackwood. "When can they be moved? When can I take them home?" "We'll begin the extraction of the bodies this afternoon if weather holds. They'll be transported to the medical examiner's facility in Anchorage for formal identification and to determine cause of death if possible. After that, assuming no complications, release to the family should be relatively quick." Alex nodded again, her gaze drawn back to her brother's face in the ice. Despite the pain of seeing him like this, she felt an odd sense of relief. At least now she knew where he was. At least now there could be a proper goodbye. The extraction process was meticulous and slow. Alex watched as the recovery team used specialized tools to free the bodies from their icy tomb without damaging either the remains or potential evidence. By late afternoon, both Lucas and Ryan had been placed in insulated transport bags and were being prepared for helicopter evacuation. As the team worked, Dr. Frost approached Alex with something in her gloved hands. "We found these near your brother. I thought you might want to see them right away." She held out 2 cameras, Lucas's trusted Nikon F5 film camera that he had been clutching when found, and a smaller, boxy digital camera that Alex recognized as the Nikon D1 he had been experimenting with. He was one of the first adventure photographers to embrace digital, though he always said film captured the soul of a place in a way digital couldn't match yet. He was carrying both on this expedition, testing the digital in extreme conditions while still relying on film for the critical shots. Dr. Frost nodded. "The film is still inside the F5, remarkably preserved by the cold, and the digital camera's compact flash card is still inserted. We'll process both under controlled conditions in Anchorage." Alex stared at the cameras, imagining her brother's final moments, still doing what he loved most, capturing images no one else could get. She said thank you quietly. As the day progressed, more equipment and personal items were recovered, each carefully documented and bagged. Alex identified what she could: Ryan's distinctive gold pendant still around his neck, Lucas's lucky red carabiner clipped to his harness, their matching Patagonia gloves custom embroidered with their initials. By evening, everything transportable had been moved to the helicopter landing zone. Blackwood approached Alex, who stood staring at the now empty depressions in the ice where her brother and his partner had lain for 5 years. "We're losing daylight. We need to head back to Talkeetna now." Alex nodded, taking one last look at the site. "Will you continue searching the area?" "Yes. A team will remain to widen the search perimeter. If there's anything else to find, we'll find it." The flight back was silent, each person lost in their own thoughts. Alex sat beside the insulated bags containing her brother and Ryan, her hand resting lightly on the one she knew held Lucas. Outside the helicopter windows, Denali glowed golden in the evening light, beautiful and indifferent to the human drama playing out against its vast backdrop. In Talkeetna, the bodies and recovered items were transferred to vehicles for transport to Anchorage. Blackwood invited Alex to ride with him in his truck.
The medical examiner will begin work tomorrow morning. With your permission, I'd like to be present for the examination. Of course, Alex agreed, staring out at the passing trees. I want to be there too. Blackwood hesitated. That's not standard procedure. Nothing about this case is standard procedure. I've spent 5 years searching for answers. I'm not going to wait outside while someone else finds them. After a moment, Blackwood nodded. I'll arrange it. They drove in silence for several miles before Alex spoke again. You don't think they died in a climbing accident, do you? Blackwood kept his eyes on the road. I try not to form theories before I have all the evidence. That's not an answer. He sighed. No, it's not. The truth is, I've investigated dozens of climbing fatalities over 20 years with the Park Service and state troopers. This doesn't fit the pattern. The positioning, the intact equipment, the location. Something doesn't add up. Then what happened to them? Well, that's what we're going to find out. The Anchorage Medical Examiner's facility was clinical and bright, a stark contrast to the natural environment where Lucas and Ryan had been found. Alex stood beside Blackwood, dressed in the same protective gear as the medical staff, watching as Dr. Vivian Cho, the state's senior forensic pathologist, prepared to examine the remains. The preservation is remarkable, Dr. Cho noted, as the first body, Lucas, was carefully removed from the transport bag and placed on the examination table. Glacial mummification has essentially frozen them in time.
Alex stared at her brother's face, now fully visible. His skin was leathery and discolored, but his features were intact, recognizable. His expression peaceful, as if he'd simply fallen asleep in the snow. I can confirm this is Lucas Novak, she said quietly. Dr. Cho nodded and began her systematic examination, dictating notes to a recorder as she worked. She noted the climbing gear still in place, the lack of obvious trauma, the positioning of the lives. Subject is wearing full climbing attire appropriate for conditions. No sign of equipment failure. No obvious fractures or traumatic injuries visible on initial examination. Interesting. There are abrasions on the wrists consistent with restraints. Alex's head snapped up. Restraints? You mean like he was tied up? Dr. Cho indicated circular marks on Lucas's wrists. These are consistent with rope burns or similar ligature marks. They occurred pre-mortem based on tissue reaction. Blackwood moved closer, examining the marks. Both wrists? Yes, and I'd wager we'll find similar marks on the second subject. True to her prediction, when Ryan Thompson's body was examined, he too showed evidence of restraint marks on his wrists. Additionally, Dr. Cho identified a subtle depression fracture at the base of his skull. Non-fatal, but would likely have caused unconsciousness, blunt force trauma, possibly from an ice axe or similar tool. As the examination continued, more anomalies emerged. Neither man showed signs of hypothermia typically seen in exposure deaths. Their core positions suggested they had died elsewhere and been placed in the glacier. Most telling of all, both had traces of an unidentified substance in their nasal passages and mouths. I'll need to run toxicology, but this appears consistent with chemical asphyxiation, Dr. Cho concluded. Not carbon monoxide, something else. I'll expedite the analysis. Alex felt simultaneously numb and hyper-aware as the implications sank in. They were murdered, she said flatly. Blackwood's expression was grim. It appears that way. The satellite phone, Alex said suddenly, and the cameras, the journal, we need to see what's on them. The technical team is working on them now, Blackwood assured her. These things take time, especially with electronics that have been frozen for years. Time is exactly what we've lost too much of already, Alex insisted. 5 years while everyone believed they just fell into a crevice. 5 years while whoever did this walked free. Back at the state trooper's office, Blackwood set up a temporary workspace for Alex in a small conference room. On the table, he spread out photographs of the recovery site and the initial findings. We'll start by establishing a timeline, he said. What do we know for certain about their last days? Alex reached into her bag and pulled out her own file of notes and documents.
Their last confirmed satellite call was on May 14, 2001 at 6:42 p.m. They reported making camp at 14,000 feet on the standard route of the West Buttress. Weather was clear, temperatures normal for May. They planned to wake at 3 a.m. to reach a specific ridge for sunrise photographs. And the search began when? May 16th, after they missed 2 scheduled check-ins. Their camp was found intact, sleeping bags still in the tent, cooking equipment set up. It looked like they had gotten up and left for their dawn shoot, but never returned. Blackwood made notes as she spoke, but they weren't found on any logical route from that camp to the ridge they mentioned. No, they were found almost 2 miles west of their camp, in an area that wasn't part of their planned route at all. A knock at the door interrupted them. A technician entered carrying a clear evidence bag containing Lucas's journal. "We've thawed and dried the journal, Detective. Initial inspection shows the contents are largely intact." Alex reached for it instinctively, then stopped herself, looking to Blackwood for permission. He nodded. "Go ahead. You'll recognize the significance of anything in there better than we would." With gloved hands, Alex carefully opened the red leather journal. The pages were slightly warped from their time in the ice, but Lucas's handwriting was clear and legible. She turned to the final entries, her heart racing. May 14, 2001. Lucas's neat script detailed their ascent and camp setup, matching exactly what he'd reported in his last satellite call. The entry ended with his excitement about the next day's shoot. Weather window perfect. The light on the north base should be exactly what we'd been chasing. Ryan has rechecked all the gear. 3 a.m. wake up. This shot will be the centerpiece of the exhibition. She turned the page, finding another entry, this one dated May 15, 2001, the day they disappeared. 2:30 a.m. Something woke me. Voices outside the tent. Too early for other climbers to be moving. Ryan heard it too. Going to check. The next entry was time-stamped 4:10 a.m. Met a solo climber named Daniel Kruger. Says he's scouting for a commercial expedition next month. Unusual to climb solo at this altitude, but he seems experienced. Mentioned he knows a perfect vantage point for the shot we're trying to get, slightly off our planned route, but promises to be worth it. Following his lead to a western ridge, left most gear at camp. The final entry was scrolled in shakier handwriting, time-stamped 5:25 a.m. Something wrong. Kruger not who he says. Recognized him from Chamonix last year. Different name then. Too isolated here. No other climbers within miles. Ryan says turn back, but Kruger blocking path. He has a partner waiting ahead. Not chance meeting. They knew we'd be here. They knew what we're after. If anything happens, tell Alex to check the inner lining of my pack. I've hidden the compact flashcard from the digital camera in the seam I modified last year. Trust no one with name K.E.
The entry ended abruptly. Alex looked up at Blackwood, her face pale. "K.E.," she whispered.
The initials match the ones we found on the equipment.
Blackwood leaned forward.
What equipment? At the recovery site, there was a specialized lens not listed in their inventory. It had initials engraved on it. K.E. The detective's expression sharpened. "Show me exactly what you're talking about." Alex flipped through the site photographs until she found what she was looking for. A close-up of a professional camera lens, partially visible in the ice near Ryan's body. The side of the lens bore small engraved initials, K.E. "This lens doesn't match anything on their equipment list," she confirmed. "And look, it's a different brand than they typically used. They were both Canon photographers, but this is a Nikon lens." Blackwood studied the image. "We need to find out who K.E. is and what connection they have to Daniel Kruger. And what Lucas meant about what they were after. They were just there to photograph the north face at sunrise. What could possibly be worth killing for?" Another knock at the door revealed a different technician, this one from the digital forensics unit. "Detective, we've managed to extract data from the satellite phone. There's something you should see." They followed the technician to a small lab where Lucas's satellite phone was connected to various equipment.
The phone itself looked remarkably intact, its screen now illuminated with recovered data. The cold preserved the electronics surprisingly well, the technician explained. The battery was dead, of course, but once we supplied power and carefully thawed it, we were able to access the call log and text memory. On the screen was a list of communications. The last outgoing call matched the known final check-in on May 14th. But after that were 3 incoming calls from the same unknown number, all on May 15th, the day they disappeared, and a single text message received at 6:17 a.m. that day. Secondary ridge secured. Targets isolated. Proceed with extraction. Compensation doubled if equipment recovered intact. K. Alex felt her blood run cold. Extraction? They were targeted deliberately. This was planned. Blackwood was already typing the unknown number into a database. This number doesn't exist in any current records, probably a satellite phone using a temporary identifier. But the message confirms premeditation. We need to identify K.E. and this Daniel Kruger. And what Lucas meant about what they were after. They were just there to photograph the north face at sunrise. What could possibly be worth killing for? Another knock at the door revealed a different technician, this one from the Digital Forensics Unit. "Detective, we've managed to extract data from the satellite phone. There's something you should see." They followed the technician to a small lab where Lucas's satellite phone was connected to various equipment. The phone itself looked remarkably intact, its screen now illuminated with recovered data. The cold preserved the electronics surprisingly well, the technician explained. The battery was dead, of course, but once we supplied power and carefully thawed it, we were able to access the call log and text memory. On the screen was a list of communications. The last outgoing call matched the known final check-in on May 14th. But after that were 3 incoming calls from the same unknown number, all on May 15th, the day they disappeared, and a single text message received at 6:17 a.m. that day. Secondary ridge secured. Targets isolated. Proceed with extraction. Compensation doubled if equipment recovered intact. K. Alex felt her blood run cold. Extraction? They were targeted deliberately. This was planned. Blackwood was already typing the unknown number into a database. This number doesn't exist in any current records, probably a satellite phone using a temporary identifier. But the message confirms premeditation. We need to identify K.E. and this Daniel Kruger. I'm running Kruger through our databases now, but if that was an alias, as your brother suspected, it might not lead anywhere directly. Alex tapped the journal thoughtfully. Lucas mentioned Chamonix, that he'd seen Kruger there under a different name. They were in Chamonix in March 2000 for an ice climbing photography shoot. I have their itinerary and contacts from that trip in my research files. Get me everything you have. Meanwhile, I'll put in a request to our technical team to check the backpack lining for that compact flash card Lucas mentioned hiding. Over the next 24 hours, Alex and Blackwood worked relentlessly, building a timeline and pursuing leads. The toxicology report confirmed both men had died from exposure to a military-grade asphyxiant, not something commonly available to the public. The forensic team carefully examined Lucas's backpack, finding a nearly invisible seam in the inner lining. When opened, it revealed a matchbook-sized compact flash card, the kind used in professional digital cameras of that era, carefully wrapped in waterproof material. A breakthrough came when Alex, reviewing her files from the Chamonix trip, found a group photograph from a climbers' gathering at a local bar. In the background, barely noticeable, was a man whose face matched the general description Lucas had given of Kruger in his journal. "Look at this," she said, showing Blackwood. "This could be him." Blackwood studied the image. "Can we enhance this section?" The technical team zoomed in and enhanced the background figure, a man in his 40s with sharp features and a distinctive scar across his left eyebrow. He was speaking with another person, partially obscured. "Run facial recognition," Blackwood instructed. Hours later, they had a name: Karl Eckardt, a German national with a history of working as a fixer for private collectors of rare photographs and artifacts. His specialty was acquiring items through questionable means when they couldn't be purchased legitimately. "This fits with the KE initials," Alex said. "But what were Lucas and Ryan working on that would interest someone like Eckardt?" According to their expedition proposal, they were documenting climate change effects on the Denali glaciers, plus capturing adventure climbing images for their upcoming exhibition. That doesn't seem worth killing for. Unless they saw something they weren't supposed to see. The next morning brought another piece of the puzzle when both the film from Lucas's Nikon F5 and the recovered compact flashcard from his digital camera were finally processed. The technical team had worked through the night, carefully developing the decades-old film and extracting data from the early digital storage device. The images were spread out on a light table when Alex and Blackwood arrived at the lab. The first several photographs showed exactly what would be expected. Breathtaking shots of the mountain at dawn, Ryan climbing against spectacular backdrops, details of ice formations and glacial features, professional, beautiful work showcasing Lucas's exceptional eye.
Then, the images changed. Shot after shot documented what appeared to be an unauthorized excavation site on a remote section of the glacier. Men in unmarked cold-weather gear worked around specialized drilling equipment. Close-ups showed core samples being extracted and carefully packaged. In one image, barely visible in the background, was a man who matched Karl Eckhardt's photograph. "What are they doing?" Alex asked, studying the images. A glaciologist who had been called in to consult pointed to the drilling equipment. "This is specialized ice core extraction technology. See how they're handling the samples? They're preserving atmospheric data." "Like climate research?" Blackwood asked. "Yes, but this doesn't look like any scientific expedition I'm familiar with. No institutional markings, no proper research protocols visible." The glaciologist frowned. "And this location? Based on the background topography, this isn't a restricted area of the park. No research permits were issued for that section in 2001. The final images were the most telling and the most disturbing. Taken with a telephoto lens from what must have been Lucas and Ryan's hiding place, they showed Eckardt examining something removed from deep in the ice core. Though distant, the image clearly showed a cylindrical metal container with hazard markings visible on its surface. "What is that?" Alex asked. The glaciologist looked troubled. "I can't say for certain, but it resembles containment vessels used for biological or chemical samples, military grade." Blackwood immediately pulled out his phone. "I need to make some calls. This just escalated beyond a murder investigation." While Blackwood contacted federal authorities, Alex continued examining the photographs, looking for any clue to what might have happened after Lucas's final journal entry. The digital images from the compact flashcard were higher quality than the film shots, suggesting Lucas had switched to the digital camera when stealth became critical. The digital sequence ended with 3 rapid shots taken from what appeared to be a hiding place behind a large boulder. They showed 2 men approaching, one clearly identifiable as Eckardt, the other matching the description of Kruger from the journal. Both were armed, and the final frame showed them looking directly toward the camera position as if they had just spotted Lucas. "This was likely the last thing he photographed," Alex said quietly, staring at the image. They were caught documenting whatever this operation was. Within hours,
federal agents had arrived in Anchorage. The evidence was handed over, and Alex found herself in a secured conference room being interviewed by serious men and women who refused to provide their specific agency affiliations. Miss Novak, we need you to understand the sensitivity of what your brother documented. This is now a matter of national security. I understand perfectly. My brother and his partner were murdered to cover up whatever operation they photographed. I want to know who was behind it, and I want them held accountable. We're pursuing all leads, an agent assured her. Carl Eckhart has been on our watch list for some time. He's known to work with private collectors, yes, but also occasionally with certain foreign interests seeking technology or materials they can't acquire through legitimate channels. And the Arctos Research Consortium, a shell company we believe was established to obscure the true nature of the operation. We've traced it to a private military contractor with concerning connections. What was in those vials? What were they recovering from the ice? Another uncomfortable silence before the senior agent replied. Based on the images and the location, we believe they were extracting biological samples preserved in the ice, specifically ancient viral and bacterial samples from ice cores dating back thousands of years. Alex stared at them in shock. Why would anyone want that? Such samples can be incredibly valuable for legitimate scientific research, understanding climate history, studying microbial evolution. But in the wrong hands, ancient pathogens for which modern humans have no immunity could also have other applications. The implication hung heavily in the air. Biological weapons research. So Lucas and Ryan died because they accidentally photographed a black market biological sample extraction, and the people responsible have walked free for 5 years? Not anymore, Blackwood said from the doorway where he had been observing the interview. We've just received word that Carl Eckhart has been located in Vienna. He's being detained by Interpol as we speak. In the days that followed, the investigation expanded rapidly. With federal resources now involved, connections were made that local authorities could never have uncovered. The Daniel Kruger identity was traced to a former military operative named Anton Reichmann, who had worked with Eckhart on several acquisitions for private collectors. Financial records revealed payments from the Arctos Research Consortium to both men in May 2001, immediately after Lucas and Ryan's disappearance.
Most damning was the discovery of communications between Eckhart and the head of the now-defunct consortium, discussing the containment of the photographer's situation and arrangements for disposal of the package. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. A week after the bodies were recovered, Alex sat in Blackwood's office reviewing the latest developments. Lucas and Ryan's remains had been officially released to their families, and preparations were underway for a joint memorial service in Toronto. Reichmann was found dead in his Zurich apartment 3 days ago, Blackwood informed her. Apparent suicide, though the timing is certainly convenient for whoever he was working with. And Eckhart, maintaining his innocence, claiming he was just a guide hired to lead an environmental research team. But his story has more holes than a glacier in summer. With the evidence from the compact flashcard and his documented presence at the site, the federal prosecutor is confident in the case. Alex nodded, staring down at a photograph of Lucas and Ryan taken just days before their final expedition. They were laughing, arms around each other's shoulders, the unforgiving beauty of Denali visible behind them. What about the samples they were extracting? Did we ever learn what specifically they were after? Blackwood shook his head. That remains classified. The official line is that it was unauthorized glacial research. Reading between the lines of what the federal agents weren't saying, it was something much more concerning. Alex sighed, gathering her papers. I should get back to Toronto. The memorial is in 3 days. I'll be there, Blackwood promised. Your brother and Ryan deserved better than what happened to them. At least now we can give them the truth as their eulogy. 1 year later, Alex stood at the edge of the Kahiltna Glacier, the spring sun warm on her face despite the surrounding ice. Behind her, a small group had gathered for the dedication of a memorial plaque placed near where Lucas and Ryan had been found. The bronze plaque read simply, Lucas Novak and Ryan Thompson, 1967-2001. They sought truth through their lenses and gave their lives for what they saw. Truth will always emerge from the ice. Below the inscription was one of Lucas's final photographs, a breathtaking sunrise over Denali, light breaking through the clouds to illuminate the vast wilderness below. Detective Blackwood, now a close friend, stood beside her. The investigation had changed both of them. For Alex, it had brought closure, but also purpose. She had established the Novak-Thompson Foundation for Investigative Photojournalism, supporting photographers documenting environmental and scientific issues in extreme locations. For Blackwood, the case had become the capstone of his career. His meticulous work had led to federal indictments against 3 executives of the private military contractor behind the Arcturus Research Consortium. Carl Eckhart had been sentenced to life imprisonment for his role in the murders. Do you think we'll ever know exactly what they were extracting from the ice? Alex asked, watching as other visitors examined the memorial plaque. Some secrets stay buried, Blackwood replied. But what matters is that Lucas and Ryan's work exposed something that needed being exposed. Their final photographs did exactly what good photojournalism should do. They revealed truth that someone wanted hidden. Alex nodded, lifting her camera. Lucas's restored Nikon F5, which she had inherited and learned to use in his memory. Through the viewfinder, she framed the vast expanse of the glacier, capturing the play of light on ice that her brother had loved so much. He always said the perfect photograph tells a story that words never could, she said quietly. I think their final story turned out to be more important than they ever imagined. As the sun continued its arc across the Alaskan sky, Alex took one last photograph, the memorial plaque with Denali rising majestically behind it. Lucas and Ryan went to the mountain seeking beauty and adventure. They found a secret that cost them their lives, but ultimately could not remain buried. Like their bodies preserved in the ice, the truth had simply been waiting for the right moment to emerge into the light.